Visually is great, but use an O3 filter and you'll really bring that out. You can't miss it that way.
Is that a so-called bow shock wave?
Excuse me?
Is that a so-called bow shock wave?
It's like that, but it's not really a shock. It's just the friction of it's going through a molecular cloud, and the friction of that gas is pushing them sideways. A bow shock wave usually from an explosion, and that's not an explosion, it's two jets. So, anyways, galaxy to look at is, let me catch my play, 2298. I'm sorry, 2292 and 2293, which are merging. Even in a small scope, you'll see this because they're fairly bright. But but it looks like two eyes staring at you when you look at it through the scope. Through a 10 and 12 inch, it's really nice, and anything bigger, you can easily see it. They're both 11th magnitude. But because they're small, use like a higher power, 250 or 300 power. It's a very pleasing sight. And as a bonus, if you look off to the side, you'll see 2295, which is a nice edge on Galaxy. So, and then just a pretty nebula, 1360. It's a planetary. It has an egg shape to it, and you can see the central star very easily. On a larger scope, you can see a trace of color. I can see it with my scope. In a smaller scope, of course, it'll be black and white, but it's still very nice to see. This shows up with or without an O3 filter. It's a little different view on either. The O3 filter will kill the central star, but so look at it both ways. But it's bright enough that even without a filter, you'll see it. Okay, then M46, worth a look, even though it's an M object, the only one I'm putting in here. And the reason is because a lot of people don't forget about the fact that there's NGC 2438, which is a planetary in it, which gives it a nice, pleasing view. You can see the open cluster, and you can see the planetary nebula rather nicely. This is through my 32. So where am I? 2438 and 46. Okay. All right. So this is NGC 1851. It's a globular cluster south of Orion, and it's in Columba. It's magnitude 7.1, so easily found. It's best at about 60 to 100 power, and it looks like a miniature M3 because it's very dense in the center and has a nice scattering of stars which are resolvable outside of the center. So worth going for, something you don't generally see from northern latitudes, easily picked up here. So don't miss that one. And it's 8 degrees southwest of Alpha Columbi. So if you're using a non-go-to, just go southwest. You'll come easily across it. It's fairly bright. Another one, 2298, and this one is in Puppis. More compact, small, but it's nearby, so you might as well take a look at it. All right. NGC 2467. Now this is a nebula. Hold on. It has an open cluster in it, kind of buried right here, but it has nice nebulosity. If you look at it without a filter, you'll see the open cluster. But if you put an O3 filter on, this section of the nebula especially is fairly bright and will easily be seen. This one is more difficult. Depends on your scope. If you have a larger scope, you'll see this. This is visible. This is visible in any scope. This stuff down here, you need an O3 filter and a larger scope. Either way, it's a pleasing object to look at. GUM 15. Anyone familiar with the GUM categories? Okay, so GUM is, you must be familiar if you're mostly from up north, the SH2 objects, right? Okay, those are all H alpha objects. Gum undertook a similar survey of the southern hemisphere from Australia, and they're named after him. And there are a number of objects, and a lot of them are too far south even from here, but quite a number of them are visible from here looking south in the winter Milky Way. There's a whole list of gum objects. This is one of them, gum 15. I plan on photographing more of them. It's fairly large. It can be seen with an O3 filter. It has very little oxygen, but that does bring it out, and no sulfur because I photographed it, but it has a lot of H alpha. Okay, it's 20 by 20 arc minutes, by the way. I'm sorry, it's in northern Vela, this one here. And anyone familiar with the RCW catalog? No? Okay, so that's another catalog of southern nebulae that, again, a number of them are visible south of Orion, and then again in the spring coming up. These are things you wouldn't normally look for up north. You're down here in the Keys, take advantage of it, look for them. This one's fairly bright, RCW 19. It's in Puppis. And it's 40 by 40 arc minutes, so if you have a moderate size refractor, you'll catch it all. Anything bigger, you're going to be in it, and actually a larger scope makes it more difficult to see because you don't have contrast to the edge. You'll only catch the center side. But in modest size refractors, this shows up rather nicely. Put an O3 filter on it because this one does have a fair amount of oxygen in it mixed in with the H alpha. That's why there's color contrast there. And it also has an open cluster in it, so it should be easy to find. So this one, just one of my favorites, since below Orion, SH2 294. It looks like a mini octopus, just something to look at. I like octopus, I'm Italian. Tastes good on spaghetti. All right, now let's get on to some things that in the Vela supernova remnant. You're all familiar with the Vela supernova remnant, right? This is one of the brightest sections. It's NGC 2736, and it's called the Pencil Nebula, or Herschel's quill pen. Herschel discovered it when doing surveys in Herschel's son when he was in South Africa, and it's it shows up rather nicely, has a fair amount of oxygen because it's it's part of a remnant of the supernova explosion. So you have nice color in it. O3 filter really brings this one out. You can't miss it. And it's a bright streak of light that's in the outer section of the Vela supernova remnant. And it's again the most easily visible portion. The eastern edge is sharp, while the western widens in a way that resembles a quill pen. So you can find it if you star hop in second magnitude lambda velorum and then go south almost 3 degrees. All right. And then the actual supernova remnant, that quill pen is over here. Okay, but it's the outer edge of it. But this, you're going to need a small refractor with an O3 filter. And even then, it's going to be challenging. But you got dark, I was counting stars last night in several constellations, so I'm convinced this is Bortle 3. So with Bortle 3, you should be able to see this, because I could just barely make it out in Naples, which is Bortle 6. So here, you should be able to see this easily. But if you use too large a scope, you're just going to be kind of inside it, so it's really difficult to see. But if you use a moderate size refractor or wide field scope, put an O3 filter on, this should be visible. And what you'll see is just kind of a network of shock zones. It's just a very amazing sight. The actual supernova neutron star is in this direction. That, of course, you're not going to be able to see. But it's well worth looking for.
You wouldn't be using an O3 filter if you were photographing these, would you?
It depends on the object. If it's a reflection nebula, I always use red, green, blue. If it's an emission nebula like this was taken with H alpha, S2, and O3. Yeah, yeah, all three. That's how you get color out of it. Yeah, basically any emission nebula is always better with the three narrowband filters. But visually, you can see it with an O3 filter. There's plenty of oxygen in this, so it'll show up really nicely. And here's another section just further to the west, another shock line. There's a whole bunch of them. Vela is huge in the sky, so well worth looking for. In fact, the person I'm bunking with has an H alpha intensifier. I'm going to try looking and speeding the whole thing with that later tonight if we don't get blown over by the wind. We'll see what happens. RCW, another RCW object, 36, and this is in Vela. Moderate brightness, maybe a little dim, but with an O3 you still should be able to see it. Use an O3 filter. It's 12 by 6 arc minutes. Just another nice nebula which you can't see from up north. I want you guys to start looking at stuff down here. Anyone whose telescope is pointing to a Polaris, I'm going to immediately denigrate you. Another RCW 38. I mean, there's a slew of these. Absolutely a slew of these. I've just scratched the surface. I've got a whole bunch more to photograph. But just this is kind of neat. This one's a little larger, so you probably need a wider field. It's large, diffuse, it's in Vela. Again, use your O3 filter, but it's just an interesting patchwork of nebula. So now that you're through the nebulas in south of the Milky Way, by this point in time, take a break, get a cup of coffee and stay up for the rest of the night, because the best stuff is actually in the morning. Okay, I kid you not. It's you got to stay up late one night. If you don't, you're missing the boat. And if you have to, since you got a little extra time at this point, take your look at M42, get it out of your system, move on. So this is NGC 2997, 9 by 7 arc minute spiral galaxy in Antilla. We're now further east. It's magnitude 9.4. It's reasonably bright, and in dark sky like this, you can't miss it. Any size scope will get you this. The bigger the scope you have, the more you'll see spiral arm structure. In a small scope, it'll just be a fuzzy blob, unfortunately, but in a larger scope, you can make out some spiral arm. Okay. And 3109, an edge on. Faint galaxy, but it's big. 19 arc minutes across. And the left side is kind of funny looking, so my guess is this has been interacted with at some point in the past. But it's not as bright as the others, and the brightness is kind of spread out because it's 19 arc minutes. So basically through your scope, it's going to look like kind of a fuzzy patch across your field of view. All right, a really nice globular, 3201. It's in Vela. It's 7th mag overall, and it's 20 arc minutes. This is equal in size to M13. Okay, so same size. So if you know, look at M13, looks like that's what this is going to look like, and it's well worth getting. Now you can have some bragging rights that you saw this one. It's too far south for us up north, but here this shows up really nicely. This was taken from Naples with the C14, so it's well worth. And you can. It has stars resolvable to the center. So do take a look at this one after you get your cup of coffee at midnight. All right. Now, the Hydra cluster, 3314. Up north, you can get this. In fact, I took this with my 32-inch on a really good night. But here, it's higher in the sky, and even with a moderate-sized scope, they're fairly bright. But it's a whole cluster. It's called a Hydra cluster, and it's just worth looking at. It's 12 by 7 arc minutes, and within that, within one field of view, you got about 18 galaxies. See how many you can catch. The bright ones, of course, you'll see. When you see the star, bright star, you know you're in the field. But you should be able to see these three here, and the others will take a little more looking, but you can do it. Anything above a 12-inch, this becomes pretty easy. Okay, NGC 4361. It's a small planetary in the middle of Corvus. Hard to see up north, but down here should be easy. And it's just an interesting planetary nebula, bright star in the center, and bright core and fainter outer edge. Easy to see. It's really bright. Shouldn't have any problem looking at that one. Finally, let's go to NGC 3621. This is 12 by 7 arc minutes. It's a good-sized galaxy. This was taken on a poor night. That's why the definition isn't as good. It's taken from Naples with a C-14. I want to redo it on a better night. We haven't had good nights around here lately, in case anyone's noticed. Okay, and here's one of the showpiece objects in the entire sky. You can't miss M83. Okay, you can see it from up north. This was taken, actually a combination. I took the luminance from Massachusetts, and I took the color red, green, blue from down here and managed to combine them in order to get this. Because in Massachusetts, it just rises, a short time above the horizon and then sets quickly. So you don't have enough time to do a 4 and 6 hour exposure. But I was able to get the luminance. Then down here, I got the red, green, blue. Combined them, comes out nice. But this is a spectacular barred galaxy. And even in small scopes, you're going to see the spiral arms, the central bar, and you're going to see lots of knots as well. Anything above a 12-inch, you're going to see knots in the spiral arms, which are the H2 regions. Well worth the look. This one deserves some study. Don't be afraid. It's bright, so don't be afraid to put a higher power on it and zoom into some of those spiral arms and see how many knots you can pick out on it. It's just a stunning galaxy and one of the showpiece objects. It's 7.5 mag, so even a small scope will pick it out. It's in Hydra, just across the border from Centaurus. And you can spot it if you star hop in 3rd mag, star Gamma Hydra, and move southeast about 7.5 degrees, and you can't miss it. It's just really bright. All right, now, some things that you just can't miss while you're down here. 5128, also known as Centaurus A. And the reason it's known as Centaurus A is because it's the brightest radio source in the sky. And the reason it's a bright radio source is this is a giant elliptical spearing right through a spiral galaxy. And because of that, the gas is interacting. Stars, of course, don't collide, but the gas does. And it's giving off intense radio noise, one of the first radio noise star objects in the sky ever seen. And it's big. So this is about twice the size of a full moon. So you really can't miss it. It's bigger than a full moon, but not quite twice. But it's you can't miss it, and through even a small scope, you're going to see the elliptical galaxy, and you're going to see a dark lane in it. You'll think it's like a spiral, but it's not. Higher power or a bigger scope, and you'll start resolving that it basically is a spiral galaxy being destroyed by the elliptical. So this is best seen around here this time of year, about 2 or 3 in the morning. Be nice and high. You can catch it rising, but my guess is you'll be a lot better off once it gets higher. And if you missed this, you came down here and wasted your time. At least spend one night staying up late. All right, Omega Centauri. You can see this as far north as southern North Carolina. I know a couple of observers have seen it, but there it's on the horizon. Okay, so you're looking through 5 or 6 atmospheres in North Carolina. Here it's nice and high. Okay, and it is spectacular. This is twice the size of the full moon. It's the largest globular cluster. Some question whether it's really a globular cluster or the core of a galaxy. The latest thinking is it probably is the core of a galaxy that got stripped by the Milky Way and now is just in an orbit around our galaxy. But it's spectacular. You can resolve, even with a Motta scope, you can resolve stars to the center. And if you have a large scope, use your lowest power in order to catch it. If you have a small scope, any size power will show it. But again, if you don't stay up and look at these, you shouldn't have come down.
That is a 3D wall, even without binocular.
Yeah. And right near them is galaxy NGC 4945. It's a spectacular galaxy. It's huge. It's 4.8 magnitude, so you really can't miss it. It's 3 arc minutes east of Xi Centauri. It's 20 arc minutes long, and it's surrounded by several smaller galaxies. So again, well worth looking at. Even a small galaxy will show you, even a small telescope will show you this. Larger scopes, you'll see some detail in the edge-on spiral arms. So I think that's the end of the southern objects. I'll take some questions on that before I talk about the 32-inch. Yep.
Is Eta Carinae 247?
Excuse me?
Is Eta Carinae 247?
Yes, too far south from here. Yeah, just below the horizon. I wish
We
I.
can see it.
You Eta Carina?
Oh, yeah.
Very low.
Very nice.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet.
But we can
I'm going to go try it then.
That's your list.
Huh?
That's your list.
Okay. Anyone else?
Would you mind going back to your list you had right back at the beginning?
Which one?
The list.
Oh,
Right back at the beginning.
okay.
That was really useful. Thank you. That one, yes.
If you got Sky and Tell, that's where this I copied right from my article in Sky and Tell.
Which one's your favourite of them all?
Um,
Is it hard to pick?
Centaurus A.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's truly spectacular. It'll burn a memory in your eyeball. Anyone else? I'll move on to the 32-inch. All right, so this should give you some things to look at instead of M objects for the next few nights. And if I see you pointing up north, I may accidentally bump your tripod.